It's done, just thought I'd check in. I know that you're not used to being on the losing side. You should have voted more like Patrick's wife. Shut up, Brittany. Make no mistake, Travis is secretly happy. His brother too, albeit a little snappy, smashed the phone. It sucks to have your fuse publicly blown. I don't blame you, Kels. Oh, this could come as a shocker, but I do love women. How'd you think I managed to secure the finest one? You need to step outside your bubble, take a big old whiff of dawn. Oh, Taylor, don't you feel silly falling for the blatant lies? Kamala tricked you with shit pouring out her ass. I'll be the president, you'll be a singer. It's a Trump story, pardon this finger.
Peach, a president who has helped create perhaps the greatest economy in the history of our country. All-time best unemployment numbers, especially for blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and women. More people working today than ever before. Rebuilt military, and Choice for Vets became #1 in the world, and independent in energy. We'll soon have record number of judges, 2 Supreme Court judges, done more than any president in his first 2.5 years, despite phony and fraudulent witch hunt illegally led against him. Big win on Mueller report, Mueller testimony, and James Comey IG report, which showed him to be a disgraced and dirty cop. Republicans have unified like never before. You don't impeach presidents for doing a great job. No obstruction, no collusion, only treasonous acts committed by the other side and led by the Democrats. Sad.
I don't even know where to begin. Welcome, everybody, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. Let's go into the breach as we do all the time Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time. We got a great show for you tonight. We got to talk about those first 2 clips. But then we're going to go a little bit around the world. We're evidently, people were not being so hyperbolic in the recent past, when they say, Biden's going to get us into World War III. We got to talk about that. The Green New Deal's not going away. I hope everybody knows they're ramping up even more and more and more when it comes to that. Justin Trudeau has something to say about that. He's setting your damn priorities. And we're going to show you all this tonight. But Joe Arsenello. And by the way, if you're watching X, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, help us out. Like, subscribe, particularly share, especially if you're seeing this on X, but wherever you're seeing it. There's a line in for those of you who don't know, that was Randy Quaid, by the way.
He's nuts, dude.
There's a line in Apocalypse Now. There's a scene in the beginning with the generals about to send Martin Sheen on his mission to go find Colonel Kurtz, Marlon Brando's character, infiltrate his camp and kill him. All right. And he's trying to tell him why he's doing this. Why him and the CIA, they're sending him to go and kill, a decorated colonel. And the general has a line. He says, every man has a breaking point, Willard. You and I have a breaking point. And Walt Kurtz has reached his, and he has clearly gone insane. That's what I thought about when I saw Randy Quaid. And I love Randy Quaid.
So do I.
He's a fantastic actor. He's funny. But then I'm watching it going, all right, I think he's got off the deep end. Everything he said was true, but I think he's got off the deep end.
Dude, have you seen the dude? He's got like a beard down to the middle of his chest. He's completely he looks like a vagrant.
Oh yeah, no, he's like he's off the grid basically.
Yeah,
I joke around a little bit. And Randy Quaid is certainly not insane, but I think he's a little nuts in a good way because he doesn't care. See, you're talking about somebody who had a major Hollywood career, Joe, and this is something that some of these that I think is hopeful, is that he had a major Hollywood career, and he said, "Screw all you, you're all insane." Called them insane. Really, is what he's doing. And he's off the grid. He doesn't care. He makes his money, Joe. Believe me, the movies and the amount of movies he's been in, he's getting paid for the rest of his life just on the residuals and all that stuff, right? But he is telling the truth. I mean, you would agree. I mean, there's no way around that.
Well, he's smart. To be honest with you, his brother also just played Reagan. I've seen him get interviewed by Tucker Carlson. Listen, they're free thinkers. You got to give free thinkers credit, especially in an industry that wants to blackball you. To your point,
isn't it funny that the industry that thinks in their minds they're the free thinkers, they're the most how would you unfree thinking people that there are as a group? Okay, everybody knows Hollywood for the longest time. Maybe not so, maybe before the '60s, but ever since the 1960s, everybody knows you got to be in lockstep in Hollywood. Okay. And if you're not in lockstep, you get blackballed. And that used to be a case here, like Marlon Brando. He sent up he took some unpopular positions. He sent up the Indian girl.
Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren. He sent Elizabeth Warren to go get his Academy Award. So people have been blackballed along the way, but never has it been in the last 20 years so bad that you can't say anything in Hollywood. And there's many, many people along the way. John Milius, who's one of my favorites, who actually wrote Apocalypse Now. He was a co-writer on Apocalypse Now, and he directed Conan the Barbarian. And so he said a million times, I would have directed 50 more movies if I wasn't conservative. Easy. He goes, but I was able to, do what I did. And everybody knows that. And guess what? Dennis and Randy Quaid, they're not taking any crap from Hollywood. Now, some might say, well, they've already made their money. Better late than never. As far as when it comes to Hollywood and speaking out against them, better late than never.
No, they could have made more money. You could look at it that way. And
What's that?
They could have made more money, and they turned it down, basically because they wanted to be free.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's none of anyone's business what you think or do outside of work, if you ask me. What you do on your time is your business. That's what a free country is all about. And frankly, the thought police has no business in your thoughts, no matter what they are. God doesn't even do that. And our government has no business in doing that.
Well, let's hope things change because, look, we know what's going, and we're going to show you a couple of things going on from, in England and everything else, especially when it comes to this, what's going on in the Ukraine. But, people say all the time, like they talk about enlightened democracies and Western democracy, and England's a Western democracy and France is a Western democracy. Joe, we're going to say it every single show if we have to. There are people in prison in England
for tweeting.
No lie. There's a woman in prison. She's a pro-life leader in the UK. She was mentally praying in front of an abortion clinic. Mentally praying. Not even orally praying. She's in jail. She got arrested. She's in jail. And so when they talk about enlightened democracy, look, you're the fascists. You're the totalitarians. You're the ones who are going to, I'm still not, the jury's out, Joe, on whether or not they're going to allow for a peaceful transition of power. I'm not believing it until January 6th. I'm being honest with you. I don't believe it.
Well, we're going to talk about that tonight because what Biden did with regard to bombing the interior of Russia with weapons that are ours is an act of war. Putin said it in September out of his own mouth.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, Thomas Massie, who's a congressman, wants him impeached. How do you do that without going through Congress? He's a lame duck president. That was a disgrace. And it goes to show you how little they care about the people of this country. He puts them in harm's way, number one. And number two, the people just voted on a direction of the nation. And he's trying to push Donald Trump in a position whereby the war can't end easily. And that is a disgrace.
Let me ask you a question. You think Trump's on the phone with Putin right now?
Oh, he already talked to him. Putin.
No, I'm saying even in light of this.
I'm sure he
action by
did. I'm sure he did. He's probably just like, hang tight. Just hang tight. I'll end it. But it just goes to show you how little they regard the people of this country and how they put an ideology before them. And it comes
Absolutely.
right down to that. And if you can't understand that, whether you like Trump or not, that should disturb you. In fact, it should terrify you.
Oh no, listen, you are absolutely right. I have to take back Joe. Last week I was trying to be Christian. Like I was trying to look at Joe Biden from a Christian perspective. Really, I'm not just saying that. I'm thinking in my mind, okay, Joe Biden, he went along with the game. He went along with his party, everything else. Probably had Trump at the White House and basically had a moment, maybe a heart to heart, and probably said to Trump, take it easy on my son if you could. Like maybe if Hunter gets sentenced, maybe you could do something, but there'll be a peaceful transition of power. I take all that back. I take all of that back. Now, I want to play you something, but because let me play you Charlie Kirk real quick. You're joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. We're going all around the world tonight. All around the world. Ukraine, we're talking a Green New Deal. Justin Trudeau doesn't even know what the hell he's talking about. In fact, Joe, you've played 1 million clips on your own, and we played a fair amount of clips with Justin Trudeau. Nothing annoys me more than what we're going to play, show our audience about him later on. But here, we're on Ukraine now. Let's stay there. Let's play Charlie Kirk and we'll come back.
Ukraine fires U.S.-made longer-range missiles into Russia. Ukraine has fired U.S.-made ATACMS missiles into Russia's Bryansk region after the Biden administration gave Kiev the green light to use the longer-range weapons against targets inside Russia. Most of the missiles were shot down, but now American-made weaponry is being used as an offensive war into the interior of Russia. Do we want a hot war with Russia? Are we already in a hot war with Russia? Do we want to get closer to a nuclear war? Is their plan to hand this unspeakable mess to Donald Trump? And why now? The only explanation could be that this bipartisan group of war worshipers want to screw up the Donald Trump presidency so much they would rather watch the world burn than give up power.
Okay, sorry about the little technical glitch. Joe, did you see the video?
I did.
Okay, and I hope our audience saw the video. Joe, thoughts?
Horrible. Disgrace. And frankly, first comment, Joe Biden had little to do with that decision. You have Joe Biden is not with it, and that's being charitable. That's just being charitable, and that's being real. Joe Biden is not who he once was. We'll phrase it that way. You have unelected bureaucrats making decisions that put American citizens in harm's way. Putin said this in September, that he will hold any Western country responsible if weapons are fired into the interior of his country. And can you blame him? Can you blame him?
Joe, see, that's a big, see, but you're bringing up a very, very big question. And this is where we have to be very clear, okay? First of all, we're against this war here at the front line with Joe and Joe. My son's 15 and a half, and they drag this war out till he's 18 and institute a draft. I'll walk him out of the country. I don't really care. Okay. My son is not going to fight or die in this BS war. But having said that, I'm not going to go on a limb. I've said on this show before at the front line with Joe and Joe, for me, the jury's out on whether Putin's the bad guy that they try to describe him as being, like Hitler and Stalin and everything else. I don't buy any of that nonsense. Okay. There isn't, but I'm not going to say he's the greatest guy in the world either. One thing I will say is this, and I think it's undeniable. Russia was provoked for decades by NATO. Everybody knows they can
from Clinton.
That's what I'm saying.
From Clinton on. Clinton, when the Soviet Union gave up control of East Germany, which, by the way, was not a popular decision amongst nationalists of power and the oligarchs in the Soviet Union, they had one condition, that the West could not move further east and that the Ukraine is no man's land. Beginning with Clinton, we were throwing that idea out there. And this is what a lot of people are saying. Smart people, not the pundits that are owned by the advertisers that are on mainstream media. People like Jonathan Sachs, people like generals out there. Listen to people, independent thinkers on the subject matter, and you'll get a completely different view. And ultimately, that was Putin's red line. And if you ask me, and this is what these thinkers have said, he was provoked because of the statements made that they were going to move into the Ukraine, and that's why he went into Crimea. Now, is that right or wrong? It clearly is wrong. It's not his country. It's a sovereign nation. However, many people are saying that if they did not say that they were going to make the Ukraine part of NATO, which was his one condition after giving up East Germany, nothing would have happened.
Well, see, but the thing is, but then that the logical conclusion is that this war is a deliberate war. We're being deliberately pushed into war, and Putin has been deliberately pulled into war. Remember, Orwell wrote about this. We're dealing with oligarchs, Joe. We're dealing with Marxists. We're dealing with hardcore leftists. For them, you need to be in a state of perpetual war. If you're not in a state of perpetual war, they're not getting what they want. Look, I don't know. Maybe they figure in their mind things are a little bit too peaceful. I don't know how they could think that. This is, you have to understand that you have all these oligarchs, all these special interests that have pushed this war. Come on, I'm going to play a clip from RFK, and he actually says it pretty good. But you really think the American people, Joe, they go for this nonsense that you could spend hundreds of billions of dollars to that little homosexual Vladimir Zelensky, and you give $700 to an American family who's starving and got their house blown out in Maui or in Western North Carolina? In other words, are you kidding me? And your Nikki Haley wants to get up there and talk about this is about freedom. My freedom's fine, Nikki. My freedom's only in jeopardy from the American left, not from Vladimir Putin. But let me play RFK Jr., Joe. Let me find the clip for you. Hang on.
Happen. It's a war the Russians tried repeatedly to settle on terms that were very, very beneficial to Ukraine and us. The major thing they wanted was for us to keep NATO out of the Ukraine. The big military contractors want to add new countries to NATO all the time. Why? Because then that country has to conform its military purchases to NATO weapon specifications, which means certain companies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed, get a trapped market. In March of 2022, we committed $113 billion. Just to give you an example, we could have built a home for almost every homeless person in this country. We then committed another $24 billion since then, 2 months ago, and now President Biden's asking for another $60 billion. But the big expenses are going to come after the war, when we have to rebuild all the things that we destroyed. Mitch McConnell was asked, can we really afford to spend $113 billion to Ukraine? He said, don't worry. It's not really going to Ukraine.
It's going to American defense manufacturers.
So he just admitted it's a money laundering scheme. And who do you think owns every one of those companies? BlackRock. So Tim Scott, during the Republican debate, said, don't worry, it's not a gift to Ukraine, it's a loan. So raise your hand if you think that loan's ever getting paid back.
So you get the point. But the thing is, everything he said not only is logical, it's all freaking true. And it's sad, Joe. It's sad.
Well, the American people were sold a bag of bad goods. they basically said we're fighting for democracy in the Ukraine. Zelensky has taken away voting rights. He has instituted martial law for men between the ages of 18 and 60. There are no more elections in the Ukraine as a result of the war and his edict. That's not democracy. In 2014, an elected government in the Ukraine was overthrown, which opened the door for this nonsense. The Ukraine is a corrupt nation. That is no lie, and that should be absolutely positively crystal clear to the American people. That money, God knows where a lot of it is, in Swiss bank accounts.
Probably a lot of it in Russia.
Who knows where a lot of it is?
Right, you're never going to find it. It's gone.
And to RFK's point, we have our own problems. America does not do a good job as far as bringing democracy to these nations, from Vietnam straight up into the Ukraine. It's a disaster and a waste of money. And to RFK's point, you're feeding the military industrial complex. All you're doing is they're giving the government money, you're giving them money. They're giving the government money, you're giving them money. It's a racket. And that's why we're in a state of perpetual war, and Trump wants to end it. The man that they said, keep his finger away from the nuclear button. Well, guess what? The very people who said that Trump was a danger, they're the danger. And Joe Biden just put the American people in danger. People should be appalled.
No, they really should. And here's the thing, too. You mentioned it earlier. You're doing this knowing that 60 days from now, you're not going to be in power. You really, like, I don't, is it Blinken pulling his strings? Is it Obama pulling his strings? I think that a move like this is way, to use Obama's own phrase, way above Obama's pay grade. I think this is other forces at stake. I don't know how to identify them.
Well, I think
Blinken comes to.
Oh, I think it comes from the Pentagon. It's unelected bureaucrats. They're a shadow government, Joe. These are people that make decisions. We have not had a president for I don't know how long. If people think that Joe Biden works a 10-hour day, you're crazy. I bet you the guy's in bed by 7 o'clock. I bet you he is in bed by 7. I wish I was in bed by 7 o'clock.
Yeah, right.
But I bet you he is in bed by 7 o'clock. There is no way he works a full day. And this is what I'm saying. You have unelected bureaucrats who are making decisions for taxpayers that should trouble people, whatever political identity you think you have.
Well, unelected bureaucrats and oligarchs and New World Order types here. If you're just joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, I got a string of clips I want to play for you. It says a lot, Joe. This will, it'll show you a lot, so you get a few different perspectives as to what's going on. But if you're watching us, wherever you're watching us, X, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, help us out. Hit that share button. Joe and I, thanks to your help, have been reaching a wider audience. Of course, we'd like to reach as wide an audience as possible. Joe, these are 3 short clips for the audience, 3 short clips. This is what we're up against.
In Europe, we need to move to a war footing. We are involved in that. We've mobilized our procurement processes. We're gifting equipment. We need to face Russia directly and rather than leaving Ukraine to do all the work.
Russia's also threatened nuclear escalation. Are you comfortable with that when people at home are watching this, worrying that you could put us at risk?
Well, it's very important. It's very important that we're steadfast in our support for Ukraine. Russia is the aggressor,
Even
and
if
Russia,
it unleashes nuclear war?
Russia has to be the one that makes the move to stop this war. It's within their gift, but we must support Ukraine. It's impacting not just Ukraine; it's impacting the rest of the world, including the UK.
Is your message to viewers back home that there will not be a nuclear war, because that is what Russia is threatening?
My message is that we need to ensure that Ukraine is put in the best possible position. This is 1,000 days of conflict, and there is a very high cost if Russian aggression is seen to pay off.
Did he share or explain his decision to approve Ukraine's use of American missiles to strike targets in Russia? And do you agree with that decision?
I have for months now talked about how important it is to degrade the capacity of the Russian military to strike into Ukraine with impunity, because Ukraine hasn't been able to strike on factories and military production sites in Russia. We have called for that for a while, so I think it's a good thing that the United States has done that and other partners are doing that. I had an excellent conversation with President Biden. He is a friend and an ally. We talked about a lot of different things, and we're going to continue to make sure we're working together in the coming months.
We're going to get to a little bit more Justin Trudeau in a bit, joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. But Joe, the question I would ask all three of those guys, particularly Keir Starmer, and I'm not joking. I would say, what do you think hell's going to look like, Keir?
Bro,
That's what I would say to him.
That conversation was disturbing, dude.
Very disturbing. They're willing to go to war, nuclear war with Russia, because they're going to insist that Putin is the aggressor, when everybody knows that, as we said earlier, and everybody knows out there who's intellectually honest, everybody knows that NATO pushed Russia to this point. Any leader of a country is not a leader if they're not going to defend their borders against aggression the way NATO aggressed against, as you said, agreement. They violated it. And he warned so many times, back off, back off, back off. I hope to God that Trump is on the phone with Putin, okay, and NATO, and letting NATO know, listen, fellas, unless that bullet actually catches my brain this time, okay, I'm going to be in office on January 6th. And then there's going to be hell to pay from the United States, because we will back out of NATO. How's that? And we will leave you to yourselves. How's that? What do you think NATO is going to do? You think they're going to do anything without the United States? The problem right now is the United States. The problem is the fact that we don't have any leadership, and those who are calling the shots behind the scenes want to launch American weapons into Russia. Joe, for the first time in all of this, I'm not a fearful person by nature. All right. I fear that something really, really, really bad can happen. And it ain't going to be because of Putin. I'm sorry, I'm not buying that line. It's because of our actions and the actions of NATO. And they need to stand down and let Trump do his thing and end this thing.
Well, dude, I can't get over how Starmer just disregards human life for an ideology. That is just, dude, that's sick. This is not even like, dude, do you know how many people would die if even one tactical nuke was launched? And here's the thing, if it is launched, it most probably won't be in the United States. If I was going to bet money, it would probably be in France or in the UK. That's if I was going to bet money on it.
Well, why would Starmer provoke Putin with language like that when he knows Putin can easily just lob a nuclear warhead right into London? Why would he try to provoke him like that? I don't get it.
Because he doesn't care about his own people. You see, this is where I'm hoping that what we just saw happen, a populist movement, and every government should be populist. Governments, democracy by its very nature is of the people. It's the people's decision, just like Brexit. They didn't want to be a part of the EU. The people spoke. Just like in 2016, the people spoke. You have to live with that, or you can't call yourself a democracy. And that is what Biden basically violated. He's a lame duck right now. You don't do what he just did. That was a disgrace. And he is in bed with Trudeau, with the oligarchs in the UK, with France, and they are putting human life. Do you know, and this is as per the Wall Street Journal, over 1 million people have died in those 1,000 days that war has gone on. 1 million. And if you ask me, it was completely unnecessary. That should never have happened. If we respected the agreement, which was established, I believe it's called the Minsk Treaty. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the chat. That was established again when Germany united and Russia gave up East Germany. And from Clinton forward, we have been threatening it, As a result, 1 million people are dead. And it may not be over, Joe.
No,
It may
no.
get
See,
worse.
that's the problem. If you leave it to these guys, they don't want it to be over. So they're saying that Putin's the aggressor. The ball's in Putin's court. No, it's not. It's in your court. You didn't have to do this, but you like Trudeau said. Joe, if I cursed on this show, I promise I can only curse. Or when it comes to Trudeau, I can't even get out a logical thought because every word that comes into my head when I think of Trudeau is a curse word. But I won't do that because I told you, and we've always told you, this is a family show. This idea that we're going to degrade Ukraine's going to degrade Russia. Listen, NATO. I don't know for certain how many weapons NATO has. Do you really want to? Hungary's not going to join you. Okay, Poland is not going to join you. They're not going to join you in going to war with Russia. You think that all those nations, they're going to actually hold to the agreement that brought NATO together in the first place, which is a check on Russia. First of all, NATO was a check on Soviet aggression, not Russian aggression, and that's why, as you said earlier, in other words, they made an agreement to keep it separate. We all know the history of it, but I don't see everybody in Europe gung ho, or every member of NATO wanting to go to war against Russia. There's got to be some that are going to say, "Hold it, fellas. I know that we're all supposed to kick in. We don't want to go to war. Why don't we go to the negotiating table?" This is the same thing. Like nobody ever learns its lesson from history. Okay, Joe. People don't like to be, how should we say this, insulted all the time. The Russian people have been constantly barraged by insults from the left. And that about their country and everything else. People don't like that. They don't like to feel like they're being humiliated in any way. Go look at Germany after World War I and the humiliation that the other nations put Germany through. Any honest historian has to say France and England, the United States, they didn't have to go that far against Germany. They humiliated Germany. What kind of reaction do you think you're going to get when you humiliate not just a government, not just a regime, but an entire people? Okay, you dehumanize them. What kind of reaction do you think you're going to get? And nobody can answer that. I just don't know what. I just don't know what. I don't need to imagine how this thing can escalate out of control. That's why somebody in our government's got to step in and remove Biden. Even now, because if he did this now, Joe, what's to say he can't do it tomorrow, the next day, or next day?
Well, I did hear today Putin did retaliate inside the Ukraine. I think that was to save face amongst his own people because obviously he has to remain popular. And when missiles come into your country, there's a call within his own people, most probably, where what are you going to do about it? They're attacking our country. And I think that was, I think it was I don't know that much about it, but from the surface of what I did see, I think it seemed to me like more of a soft target, meaning it was just
a warning, a shot across the bow.
Right. But we still have time before January. And this is what Charlie Kirk said. And I agree. They're willing to burn it all down.
All of it
because
down.
It's all about an ideology. And this is where I only wish the diehard Democrats, the ideological Democrats, could see with eyes wide open this government, what they actually think of you and me. We're all in the same boat. They don't represent us. They represent an ideology. This was a blatant example of that. He had no right to do this, yet he did it. And I'll tell you this, if they continue with this, they should impeach him. There should, but here's the problem, Joe. There are Republicans in the Congress who wanted to do this last year, like Lindsey Graham. Many Republicans are secretly or not, they're not saying it, they're more than happy that took place. And again, they don't represent us either. And this is exactly why, if you ask me, Trump was elected. People's eyes are beginning to open, but not enough of them are. And this is an example in
I
plain
think the
sight.
people, I think the eyes of our people, the American people, are open on the whole Ukraine issue, but our government is not. Our government is not. Now, Israel and Gaza, that's a different story because a lot of people in America are in favor of that. I think most people in America are not in favor of sending all this money and to the Ukraine and not doing anything to stop this war. If you're just joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, we're going way into we have been in the breach. We're going even further in the breach. Wherever you're watching us, help us out wherever you can. Could you hit a like, a subscribe, a share, do all that fun stuff? Where our audience is growing thanks to you. Hopefully it could grow even more. So let's pivot. The last clip I played, it was Justin Trudeau talking about Ukraine. Joe, that guy just makes my stomach turn. I'm sorry. You did all those videos on Facebook over the course of a year, got hundreds of thousands of views over the course of a year, and your stomach is still intact. I am so very shocked that that's the case. 'Cause I can't stomach Trudeau for 3 seconds. So let's pivot from Ukraine to another war that we're in, which is the war to stop this propaganda about climate change, global warming, or whatever the hell else you want to call it. Now, here's what Justin Trudeau has to say to you. If you're a Canadian and if you're worried about prices, here's Trudeau. Here's what he thinks about you.
Easy when you're in a short-term survive. I got to be able to pay the rent this month. I got to be able to buy groceries for my kids, to say, okay, let's put climate change as a slightly lower priority. And that's something that's instinctive. When the storm comes, you want to hunker down and just sort of huddle up and wait for it to blow over. We can't do that around climate change. And unfortunately, we have an awful lot of political amplification of the kind of narrative that is directly opposed to that.
Dude, that is delusional.
My stomach is doing 360s right now. Here's the thing. Who the F are you? Where you're not affected one bit when milk and gas and everything else goes up. And you're going to say it's natural for people to hunker down. It's natural to, you know what's natural to do, Justin? And Joe, I'm going to throw it over to you because I can't talk about this because the veins popping out of my head. You know what's natural, Justin? To call you an effing a-hole. That's what's natural. Because what you're doing is you're lying. You're lying and you're a show. You think that you're going to still try to convince people that this hoax that you call climate change is for real while they can't put food on the table? And you're saying to them that they must listen to you. Don't worry about paying those bills. They must listen to you because climate change is an existential threat. Joe, help me, please.
It shows how out of touch this group of people actually are. I recently saw an interview, and the man it was William Shatner, another Canadian, went to the same school as Justin Trudeau, McGill University in Montreal, and he was on Bill Maher. For people who don't know, William Shatner is uber rich. He made a ton of money on Priceline, more than he made with Star Trek. I heard he's worth around $600 million, just to give you a number. He was in an interview with Bill Maher, and he was being sincere. I could tell. He was not being fake. He was being absolutely sincere. And he's like, I don't understand how Donald Trump won. How couldn't people vote for Kamala Harris? And now Bill Maher interjects, and he says, well, you know, Bill, a lot of people can't afford food. And he's like you could just tell he couldn't grasp that reality. And it's the same idea that Trudeau and many of the people in America, when I mean many, the elites, they have the same mentality. I can afford food. I don't know what you're talking about. I see that on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a site for people who may not know where you post your resume. A lot of professional people, I've noted this on other shows, they're just absolutely in disbelief. How could you possibly vote for Donald Trump? Well, I can't eat. The last 4 years, I can't eat. And by the way, the last 16 years, 12 of those 16 years, Democrats have controlled the presidency. So it's not Donald Trump's problem. And I can't afford to live. And that is exactly what Justin Trudeau, to be honest with you, it's an insult. He's saying it's slightly comes second. You got to put that on the burner, but you got to still keep an eye on it. What are you talking about, Justin? I can't feed my kids. You can, but I can't. And that is an insult to regular people. And once again, this should be an example for everybody to know that if you are supporting a globalist, you are slitting your own throat. Globalists are anti-worker, anti-middle class. This is factual. And they're more ahead of it in the UK, in Europe, in Canada, in New Zealand, in Australia than they are here. But we got a taste of it in these last 4 years. And I got news for you. Any person who's in the middle class, who votes for anybody who's in bed with the globalists and the global elite, you're crazy. You're slitting your own throat.
No, absolutely. And that's what people need to understand is that, remember something, Joe, they have to sell you fear. I mean, this has been going on for decades and decades and decades. The Earth's going to end in 10 years. That was 50 years ago. Then the Earth's going to end in 8 years. It's an existential threat, climate change. And then that is proven full. It's like all those evangelicals who say they're going to tell you exactly the time and day that Jesus is coming back. It's like, dude, didn't you read the book? The book says even the sun doesn't know when he's coming back. What are you talking about? All right. By the way, who was that, Joe, that you just put up there? So El Guapo says what we say on the show. Hello, El Guapo. The globalists want 6 billion less people on Earth. This is a stated goal of the globalists. This is them talking. This is those stones that were destroyed down in Georgia. All right. And everybody knows what the New World Order is all about. That is exact. There's 8 billion people in the world. And they actually, the way I heard it was, they want no more than 500 million people in the world. They want to create a slave class of people. And they, of course, are going to be in the elites. The slave class of people will work for them to enrich them. And they'll give the slave class, all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll they want. They'll control their population through abortion, contraception. All you got order. Of course, the idea of what do you call the idea of population reduction, that is first and foremost on their list. Now, Joe, I want to play you a clip, all right? Because we also know, along with climate change and the and that whole hoax, okay. The other thing is they're gonna really try to convince you, so that you don't believe your lying eyes. They're really gonna try to convince you that, well, an election integrity, I don't even, that's just a right-wing construct. Here, I'll show you.
Dave McCormick. Democratic officials in at least one key county, Bucks County, voted to count about 115 provisional ballots that are missing a signature, despite the Pennsylvania Supreme Court previously ruling that those are invalid. I want you to take a listen to how one Democratic Bucks County commissioner justified her actions.
I think we all know that precedent by a court doesn't matter anymore in this country, and people violate laws anytime they want. So for me, if I violate this law, it's because I want a court to pay attention to it.
So the Washington Post editorial board called that, quote, corrosive to democracy, unquote, and said, quote, county officials do not get to decide whether a legal requirement is material and must be followed. Courts do, and they have spoken clearly, unquote. What's your take? What's your response to that Democratic official deliberately announcing that they're going to defy court orders and count these provisional ballots?
Well, again, I'm not going to chase every kinds of quotes, things like that, because I think you just pointed out that it refers to about 115 ballots, and that's not going to have an impact on this race at this point. So where we are now? It's very, very close, and I guarantee you, if Dave McCormick were in the opposite situation.
Yeah, let's get rid of Fetterman. Let's focus on that Democrat county commissioner in Bucks County. Okay, there's your problem. She is playing a tit for tat game and saying that some people don't follow the law, so I don't have to follow the law. She was very cryptic. She didn't say exactly who she was referring to, Probably Donald Trump. I don't know. Maybe she's making something up in her own warped, twisted leftist mind. But where do you get your balls big enough to defy a court order? What do you mean you're supposed to go to jail?
You should get arrested. It's that easy. Joe, they have to federalize elections. They can't do it at the state level. They'll never be able to do that, but they can make it a law for all federal elections, Congress, Senate, President. Basically, you have to show ID, paper ballots, you show up in person, and the vote is tabulated and the decision is rendered in one day. They have to do that because this is nonsense. And I'll tell you this, Donald Trump won handily, and we're lucky as a nation he did, because if it was close, the courts would have decided, not the people, who the president of the United States was. And that is exactly what they were hoping for. But they didn't get the outcome that they desired. And that should also disturb every single person in America, whether you like Trump or not. That is not the country that was founded in 1776. It's a country of the people. There is no reason why 70% of America votes by mail when it has been shown, it's a precedent, that is a situation that can result in trouble. It's a precedent. Countries like France have backed away from it. You have a bipartisan study of Jimmy Carter and James Baker saying the same thing. This is a problem. And what you just watched, the number of ballots doesn't mean anything. It's the very statement that that woman said. The court doesn't matter. What are you talking about? It's the Supreme Court. Then you don't believe in the country.
Right.
I don't know how this is. Dude, I can't even believe this is real.
Scott Pressman went up. There's a clip of Scott Pressman going around. Everybody knows the work that he did in Pennsylvania. Scott Pressman went right up to these same commissioners and basically told me, he says, we flipped Bucks County from blue to red. We registered more Republicans in the last however long period of time. He just went on and on. He says, and peacefully, and he emphasized the word peacefully, and peacefully we're coming after you in 2027, and you're all going to be gone. You're all going to be gone. And that same woman went, try it. She went, now he's going up there as a citizen, and her attitude towards him is, try it, or something like that.
She should be in jail.
She really should be in jail.
No, I'm being honest. You don't. Who are you? Like, this is what I'm saying. And here's the thing. There's no accountability in states like Pennsylvania when you have a radicalized governor. This is a problem. That is why we had the 4 years that we just had, because radicalized governors like Waltz allowing a city to burn. Are you crazy? Like, this is absurd. For what? An ideology. Another example of people putting ideology before the people they swore they would serve. Open your eyes. Yep. It doesn't matter. This election was not about Donald Trump. And frankly, the United States is in a place where the government does not serve us anymore. And that has to end. And I'm going to tell you right now, if it doesn't end, it's only going to grow worse.
You know what's got to happen, in my view? Trump's got to come in. He's got to start throwing everything back to the states as he dismantles the administrative state. And if California wants an EPA and a Department of Energy, they could have it. If Texas doesn't want it, throw it all back to the states. And you know what? Let the states do like that woman is talking about in that clip. Let them do whatever they want. You know what's going to happen? I believe, could be wrong, as the federal government is not there to give the money anymore, I would say the federal government should not give any money to the states anymore. No more redistributing money from wealthy states to poorer states. You're on your own. If you can't run your own government, if you can't run your own budgets and impose your own taxes or whatever you want in your state, don't look to the federal government. The federal government's out of this business now, okay? If they were to do that and everything went back to the states and let the states deal with all their crap on their own, you'll get a real mass exodus from a lot of these blue states. You want to know why they don't right now, Joe? Because they do get hundreds of billions of dollars in federal aid that let's say, for argument's sake. So Mayor de Blasio, when he was mayor of New York City, that disgraziad, okay? I haven't said that word in a while, Joe. Disgraziad. It's a good word. We're going to bring back disgraziad. He knew what he was doing when they bust budgets. So do some of these governors. They get federal money. There's always an incentive for them to overspend, overreach, because all the federal money's got to stop, and you got to take care of your own education. You get no more money from the federal government. You take care of your own issues in your own states. People are going to start to say, even in Minnesota, I'm in Arizona. You know how many people I've met here from Minnesota? Tons. Chicago? Tons. One of my dearest friends that I've met since I've been here, Chicago. Tons of people I've met from the Midwest, blue states, okay? Getting out of there. They're getting out of there. And I bet you it would be even more if Trump gets his way. If Trump gets John Thune and the rest of the Republicans behind him in his administration, get Elon Musk in there and Vivek in there to say, look, this is how we're going to spend money from now on. This is the way things are going to work. I think that's going to cause some migration in the country. And maybe some of these centers of power in Cook County, in New York County, in Essex County and Hudson County, New Jersey, Los Angeles County, maybe some of this power is going to start to come out of these urban areas and become a little bit more decentralized, hopefully. Now, I know that was a little long-winded and it's kind of an hypothesis. I can't certainly scientifically prove it, but I think it would be a good idea if that was to happen.
Federalism is part of how our nation was established. States clearly should have some rights, no question about it. Ultimately, the government has gotten too big. Ultimately, you have unelected bureaucrats who are making decisions, big decisions like bombing the Soviet Union. We haven't had a president who's basically been on the ball for probably 2 years. Who's making those decisions? Joe Biden's in bed by 7 o'clock, guaranteed. Yeah. Ultimately, the country is not the country that was established by our founders, and that is a shame. This has been going on for decades. It's not new. This has been going on for decades. Trump is about to try to scale back the government. In doing that, he's giving us more power. Let's see if he can accomplish it. It's going to be a fight. They're going to fight tooth and nail. They're already throwing stones at him, i.e. bombs into Russia, which puts all of us in harm's way. This should be appalling. This is appalling, if you ask me. And frankly, Massey's right. If he continues with it, they should impeach him. Biden's legacy is nothing more. It's sad. Joe Biden sold his soul to a puppet state. He's nothing more than the tip of a spear. Joe, it's so sad to watch. It really is. And I'll be honest with you. These last 4 years were such a dark mark on this country in more ways than one, from wokeism to what they did to us during COVID, to taking away rights.
Yeah.
Hurting us.
To stealing elections.
Oh, Joe, changing election laws, manipulating them, not using the legislative and the state Senate to pass laws to change those laws in the name of what? In the name of what? Donald Trump. He's a threat to democracy. He's a threat to you. That's why you're doing it.
If they ever were in a straight up debate on this, they'd lose. And that's why they don't want public debate on this. That's why they just want to shut you down. They want to shout you down. They want to demonize you. They want to dehumanize you. Any debate on who the fascists are, who the totalitarians are, who the authoritarians are, excuse me, and all the other names that they use, that they throw at conservatives and Republicans, any debate on that, they would clearly lose. They're the ones taking away your right to free expression of your religion. They're the ones that are taking away your right to free speech. They're the ones who want to take away your right to bear arms. They want to take away your right to privacy. They're the ones that want to do all this. It's not the Republicans and not the conservatives that want to do this. Not Donald Trump that wants to do this. They're the ones that Joe Biden did this move because he is not going to follow through on a peaceful transition of power. Because they're going to use this as a pretext to try to suggest Donald Trump. I don't know how they're going to do it, but then again, these people think so outlandishly that anything is possible. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but it seems to me like they're grasping now because they see, like you said, Trump won so convincingly they have to do something. Joe, I got to give you the final word before we play our last clip for everybody.
Ultimately, the way I see it, Joe, we're all in this together. They want to divide the nation. Look at the Trump coalition. You have 45% of Latinos voting for Donald Trump. You had Muslims voting for Donald Trump. You had Jews voting for Donald Trump. 1 in 5 African-American men voted for Donald Trump. Women voted for Donald Trump. This is the broadest coalition I have ever seen politically in America. In America. And this is, if you ask me, an example of people seeing something, identifying a common enemy. The common enemy isn't your neighbor. You may not agree with your neighbor on everything, but ultimately, if we all stand together, we will thrive as a nation. And let the democracy work. Let the best argument work. That is what the country was about. Let the people decide. Don't let the machine decide for you, because the machine doesn't serve you. They're there for one thing and one thing only: to provide for us. We're not here to provide for them. That's what's missing. That's what needs to change.
For next week, we got to try to pull up some info on what's coming out of the Trump soon-to-be administration on the income tax, because that's going to be a big thing too. When the government's no longer allowed to treat your paycheck like it's theirs, and they decide how much they're going to let you keep. That and things like that are going to be very big moves, but we'll save that till next week. In the meantime, don't leave. We're going to play a clip that pertains to the conversation that we had tonight. It's just a couple minutes. We want to leave you with that. Remember to like, subscribe, and share wherever you're watching The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Of course, we are so grateful to you all for always supporting us, okay? We see you all in the chat room. We got some new faces in there tonight. But wherever you are, please share this video. Like us, subscribe, and please share this video. Help us out a little bit. Stick around for the clip. And remember, until next week, Thursday nights, 9 o'clock, our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation is going on everywhere. See you next week.
If there was a full-scale nuclear war between Russia and the United States. Based on non-classified data, the aftermath might go something like this. When one side launches nuclear missiles, the other side detects them and fires back before impact. U.S. submarine-launched ballistic missiles from west of Norway start striking Russia after about 10 minutes, and Russian ones from north of Canada start hitting the U.S. a few minutes later. The very first strikes are high-altitude EMP attacks, frying electronics and power grids by creating an electromagnetic pulse of tens of thousands of volts per meter. The next strikes target command and control, as well as nuclear launch facilities. Land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles take about half an hour to arrive. Major cities are targeted, both because they contain military facilities and to stymie the enemy's post-war recovery. Some cruise missiles take hours to reach their target. Each impact creates a fireball about as hot as the core of the sun, followed by a radioactive mushroom cloud. These intense explosions vaporize people nearby and cause fires and blindness further away. The fireball expansion then causes a blast wave that damages buildings, crushing nearby ones. The United Kingdom and France have nuclear capabilities and are obliged by NATO's Article 5 to defend the US. So Russia hits them too. Firestorms engulf many cities, where storm-level winds fan the flames, igniting anything that can burn, melting glass and some metals, and turning asphalt into flammable hot liquid. But the explosions, the electromagnetic pulse, and the radioactivity aren't the worst part. Nuclear winter is, caused by the black carbon smoke from the nuclear firestorms. The Hiroshima atomic bomb caused such a firestorm, but today's hydrogen bombs are much more powerful. A large city like Moscow, with almost 50 times more people, can create much more smoke. and a firestorm sends plumes of black smoke up into the stratosphere, far above any rain clouds that would otherwise wash out the smoke. This black smoke gets heated by sunlight, lofting it like a hot air balloon for up to a decade. High-altitude jet streams are so fast that it takes only a few days for the smoke to spread across much of the northern hemisphere. In the meantime, Earth gets freezing cold, even during the summer, with farmland in Kansas cooling by about 20 degrees centigrade or 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and other regions cooling almost twice as much. A recent scientific paper estimates that over 5 billion people could starve to death, including around 99% of those in the United States, Europe, Russia, and China. We obviously don't know how many people will survive a nuclear war. But if it's even remotely as bad as scientists think, then it has no winners, merely losers. It's easy to feel powerless, but the good news is that there is something you can do to help. Please share this video, because the more people know about nuclear war, the less likely